Alright, and we're back. I've put a bunch of different things into this scene, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at what we've done here. So I've only focused on this little corner here because we're going to make this kind of a tight macro shot. You know, try to get kind of a close-up view here of, you know, this little corner. So, you know, you can tell that we've put a bunch of, you know, plants and, you know, some dirt and a bunch of rocks and concrete and rubble and some different, you know, little trash things and all sorts of different objects, as well as a bunch of decals and debris and, you know, a lot of different things that you can find on the, you know, Quixel Asset Store if you just scroll through it. So now we're kind of ready to start messing around with our textures and trying to, you know, enhance this scene a little bit, make it look a little bit better than where we're at right now. And, you know, the first thing I want to point out is that one of the things I did is I scaled up this HDRI backdrop. It needed to be a little bit bigger, so we went ahead and did that. So I made it 1000, and we need to kind of, like, you know, fix the projection center a little bit, it seems like. Alright, that's about right. Cool. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this HDRI backdrop. I just want a different view. Something like that seems nice. Keep it open and airy, but, you know, be able to see some of the background. We're also going to throw in some... Jeez, I can't spell today. Throw in some exponential fog. We're going to change the height fall off a little bit so that it, you know, kind of gives a nice gradient. Crank up the density a bit. And mess around a little with the opacity. Alright. Let's also throw in some atmospheric fog. I like to kind of double some of these up. You're not always supposed to do this, but for a cinematic, it can be pretty cool. So let's multiply that out. We're going to create some more density. Scale it up a little bit. Density height. Change the max scatter. No, I'm going to leave that where it is. Altitude, probably fine. We'll pump up the sun multiplier just a little bit. Cool. Alright. One other thing I want to do, I guess, with this is I want to just go back to that exponential fog, and I want to make it a little thicker. Cool. Alright. One other thing you can also use is a sky atmosphere, which can give you some pretty cool colors. I'm just sort of, you know, messing around right now. Cool. Alright, so you can play around with that stuff and, you know, mix and match and see what you like. And, you know, you don't really have to use any of them if you don't want to. You can do all sorts of different things. But, you know, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that as you lay out all these different things, you know, decals and specific things that don't need to be put onto planes, because sometimes when you pull in some of these materials, you'll actually have to pull in a geometry, like a plane. And let's see if I can find one. So this metal scrap, for example, if I bring it in, it actually like will actually affect my entire shape, and it'll cut out my geometry. So that's an instance where you actually have to put it on a plane. So we're going to undo that. And I'll put it on the plane, and you can see that it, you know, it has opacity masks and everything, so it cuts it out for you, and you can scale it and put it into your scene if you want or whatever. And well, now it just disappeared. Oh no. Well, I seem to have lost it. Oh wait, that's because it's on a plane, right? See, this gets confusing sometimes. So we pull that back up. Cool. So you can see that, you know, just move it around. So if you ever drag something in and something weird happens where like your geometry goes missing, just undo it and then pull a geometry like a plane or a cube in or something and throw it on there and see what happens, and it probably will work. Because sometimes it's, you know, the material instance needs to actually be on a specific geometry. The other thing I'll point out is that you can see here this is rising into the other geometry a little bit, and this is part of this rusted plate. So we'll find that plate, and we'll go into this X scale after we unlink, and we'll bring that down a little bit, and you can see that it starts to disappear. And we don't want to be careful because we don't want it to completely disappear. So what we'll do is we'll get it down pretty low, and then we'll go on our Z value and sort of pull it down a little more. You can also see that it looks like some of the tiling is also doing that, so we can go back in and find our mosaic, whichever one specifically, and pull that down too a little bit. Cool. So now we've got everything kind of wrapped up. It looks like I need to pull this back too, though. Oh god. I think this is on a plane though, so I think I can pull it. Yeah, nice. Looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and start doing some texturing just on the base materials before we get into vertex painting. So what we'll do now is, you know, we'll jump into this staircase here, which already looks pretty good. You can see here that there's a bunch of different materials, you know, that have already been compiled for you. If you look here in the general, there's the parent material. Be careful with these. You don't want to mess with these unless you make a duplicate, because they tend to be connected to all of the materials from the pack, or in this case from Quixel. So when you click on this, you know, you can change it, but bear in mind you're going to end up changing the whole thing. So it's always good to make a, you know, new one and actually, you know, work on that instead of the original material, because you'll affect it and then, you know, all your shit looks the same, and maybe that's not good. But if you double click in here, you can see how this is set up, and you can see, you know, it's pretty simple. You've got your textures all in one place, you've got your tiling over here and your adjustments, and yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I'll explain what this stuff is over here in a minute, but basically, you know, they've created this in a way where the material's put together for you already, and, you know, all of them are in parameter groups here for you to kind of use as an instance. If you're not familiar with an instance, basically what that is it's a duplicate of your material. In this case, it's a connected instance to a master material, so that's why you would have to duplicate that original master material and then create a new instance, or link that instance to that new duplicated master material. So if we look at this here, we can see that all of these things, you know, the albedo, the metallic controls, the normals, all that stuff is in here. And if we jump back into that parent material, you can see that that's all in the map adjustments here, which is a node that's inside of Unreal. And if you just go ahead and click and you type in mf_map, you can find that node. And basically, you know, once you set up all of your textures and your shaders or whatever, you can just pipe them into here. You've got albedo, metallic, roughness, tangent normals, detail normals, whatever you can read. So there you go. That's how this is basically set up. You can also manually set up parameters if you want with scalar parameters and things like that, and you know, multiply them in or add them in depending on the math that you're looking for. But in this case, this is kind of already nice and set up for you, so it's a good way to kind of get started. But this is kind of what drives those parameters in that texture that you're looking at. I'm not going to save it. We'll go back in. So you'll see here this is really blurry, and you'll wonder why that is. It's because I've messed with the tiling offset. You don't always want to do that because these textures are made specifically for some of the geometry. They've been scanned to match. So in me messing around with the X tiling, you know, you can see that it's gotten blurry. So I'll just turn that off, and you can see it pops back to normal. So sometimes you'll want to use this, sometimes you won't. It's not a case right now where I'm interested in doing that because I kind of, you know, don't want to mess with the original material in this case because it's a mega scan. So we're just gonna not worry about that. But what you can do is you can mess with the other stuff like the albedo and the normal and the metallics, and you know, we can kind of click on this and sort of, you know, mess around with some of the brightness. And the contrast is a great one because it's a nice compositing trick to kind of add a little bit of detail and sharpness to it. Can also come down here, and I've already, you know, messed around with some of these things ahead of time, but it looks like maybe that didn't save, so we'll go ahead and redo that. If you hit roughness and you pull this back, your min roughness in the negatives a little bit, you can get some really nice sheens and things like that, but you have to be careful. You don't want to go too far because it starts to look like metal or wet. The same is true for, you know, the max. You kind of want to keep it in a low area, but not too crazy. For normal strength, I'm going to crank that up a little bit, and then detail normal override. I like that one a lot, but don't go crazy with it because, you know, it can add definitely maybe the wrong look, but in this case it's good. It looks a little bit more weathered. You know, you get a nice little kind of contour here. Looks good. Cool. I'm also going to turn on the metallic properties a little bit, just because sometimes it can be nice to have that as well as your specular to kind of create a little bit more of a glint when the light hits it. Cool. So I'm thinking that looks pretty nice. So pop back out, update the texture. Great. Cool. Let's do the same thing here with this wall. Pop in here. Just mess around a little bit more with the brightness, contrast, get into some of the roughness, detail, normal, normal, normal. Cool. Alrighty. Alright. It's looking pretty good. Do it to some of these rocks as well. Give this a little bit more. That's a little blue. Alright. Let's see. Do it to this guy. Or gal, I guess. I don't know. So again, you know, you want to mess with these at your own discretion. You can kind of create your own look and, you know, find out exactly what looks best for you. But it's important to just kind of like, you know, dial these in a little bit, per item, especially if you're trying to get stuff to look a little bit more real. So now that we've done that, we can add a little bit of wind to these bad boys here, these little trees. And they've already broken this out for you within these materials. It's really awesome. So you can just go into the foliage material to see what's going on if you want. Again, just be careful about messing with it because it affects all of them. So you can see here they've built out the wind for you with different scalar parameters and then a pre-compiled, grass wind parameter organizer. I don't know what the hell this thing is called, but yeah, it's great because it's already like done for you. It's amazing. So what you can do on your own if you want, if you don't have this, is you could, of course, plug in a panner node, and this node actually allows you to move and create speeds of constant animation on the X and the Y channel. So once you have this, you just plug this into your UV basically. So like if I'm looking at my normal map, right, and I want this thing to move, I basically would just plug my UVs in here, and then I would just turn these on, and boom, my normal is now animating. Now, I don't really want to do that right now because this is not how I want to set it up since it's already pre-set up for me, but it's great to know that you can do it, and this is how one of these simple ways you can, just by using the panner node. So let's just say you wanted to move it on your own instead of having it animated like that. You wanted to like manually just move it or something like that, or you wanted to create some kind of an offset. Then you could basically use the texture coordinate, and the texture coordinate contains your red and green channels. Also import scale. I'm gonna need a couple of these. Alright, now we're also going to need a mask component, 2 of them. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Alright. Alright, so this one will be red, and, well, no, that one will be red. Green. Alright. Now we're going to add the value. And then we're going to append the vector. Cool. So now this is like set up so you can start moving your UVs. So now if we go down to the normal and we attach our UV, we can preview this, which we already are. And if you start to move these parameters, you'll see that the normals are moving around. Cool. So that's how that works. We're gonna go ahead and delete that. But yeah, that's a pretty quick and simple way to move some UVs around, and you can also find some mirror nodes in there to do things like that, and also some tiling options. And there's a million different ways, of course, to do everything in Unreal, just like in Flame and Nuke and Resolve and all sorts of different programs. So just remember that not one way is necessarily correct, but just find what you're comfortable with, and as long as it's not causing you to crash, you're probably going to be fine, as long as you're trying to make something for a cinematic purpose, because the way that my studio uses this is mainly as a tool for previs and content creation and virtual production sets. So as we use things, it's more about kind of comparing it to traditional CG, where we render things out and we tune them in, and it's more about getting an EXR sequence rather than a playable FPS game, you know. So it's a little bit of a different mindset, and that's one of the most amazing things about Unreal, is that you can do all these different things with it. There's not one limitation. So for creators, it's crazy. But anyway, that's how you would set up, you know, moving things around if you wanted to, or if you wanted to animate wind and things. In this case, you know, we've already got our wind set up with these different switches and, you know, the parameters, the simple grass wind, and of course, you know, you can literally type that in and it's right there, so you can just plug everything in. So again, we're set up and ready to go, so we're just going to pop out. We're going to go back in. And in order to get this to actually work, what we have to do is enable the grass wind. So once we do that, we then also have to click false so that we can get this whole thing actually moving around a little bit. And it's moving pretty dramatically, which is because all of these are set very high. So we'll drop these down. So that's giving it some subtle movement. I might want a little bit more. Alright. So now that we've done that, why don't we start to do some texture painting, just to kind of like, you know, make this area a little bit more interesting. So what we're going to do here is we're going to grab this parent material. So let's go find that. Concrete Castle. And let's find that parent material. Stairs. We'll duplicate that. Cool. So now open up your material again. Bring that stairs comp in. And now we can start to manipulate inside this master material some different things. And I've already set a few of them up so you can see here, but basically, you know, you can do this with your albedo, you can do this with your normals, and you can do this with all the other channels as well. And I've only chosen to do this with my normals and my albedo for the sake of this, just for time, because it's, you know, quicker. But as you can see here, if you've got, I'll redo one of them here because I know it will be a little bit confusing otherwise. So let's choose the red channel since that's the first one. Now, just to start off, when you're doing vertex painting, you need to use a vertex color node. And make sure you spell it right, because I did that a lot and it wasn't working. And so what that does is it'll input, you know, a node graph basically that has outputs for all of them. And you're going to want to use your, you know, different channels here to create some different textures. And it's, you know, generally easier to use RGB, but you can also use your alpha channel if you want, and you can also use your RGBA channel if you want as well. But, you know, again, for the sake of this, we're just going to use the R, G, and B channel. So once you have your vertex color node in, what you need to do is just pull in whatever albedo and textures that you're interested in messing around with. So let's see if we can go find a new one. So let's find a forest terrain pack. Cool. So I've got this one here. We'll go in and grab this albedo. And again, remember, you want to find the matching textures for these and build these out much more robustly and get the roughness and, you know, the opacity masks and all that stuff, if you have it, into the same fold so that everything is unified and you're manipulating it all at the same time. For the sake of this, again, I'm just going to do the albedo and the normals. I've already done the, you know, 3 here, which I'm going to paint in a second, but I'll show you this one here just for the sake of learning. So you're going to want to bring in a linear interpolate node, or a lerp. And for flame guys, that's like a logic op or a comp node. For nuke guys, it's like a merge node. Basically, it's just, you know, A, B, input, and alpha channel, and it mixes together based on the alpha, and you can set that value over here. So the only thing that it doesn't have is blending modes, so womp womp, but you can do that manually if you want. One thing to note is that if you want to do some blends specifically, instead of doing it with a lerp, you can actually type in blend, and they've got all the different blending modes in blends, so you can use those instead of a lerp. This is just a manual function for it. So A over B, and in this case we're going to be using the red channel, and you can see that I've already done it here with some other ones, but I'm going to get rid of this vertex color node, and we're just going to go ahead and use this one for now, just to keep it simple. And the way that this works basically is when you have a texture, you then need to attach it to a channel. So RGB, A, whatever channel you want to use, grab a linear interpolate node, lerp. For nuke guys, it's basically a merge node. For flame guys, it's logic op. You don't have blending modes in it, so it's just an A over B with an alpha channel attached for weight. If you want to blend, type in blend modes, and you can see all of these different blend modes as per, Photoshop blending and, flame blending and nuke blending, whatever you want. So we're going to attach, this is our initial albedo, so we're going to make that B. And we're going to make our new source A. And then we're going to put the red channel in the alpha. And then we're going to attach that to the chain here. So now, as you can see, we've got green, which is grass, and then some other concrete textures all in a line here in different channels. So we've got red, green, and blue. And they're correlating vectors with the exception of the grass. And it doesn't really matter for me. This is actually going to be interesting to see what this normal does when I paint the grass in, but that's fine. So again, we're using the red channel for this, and we've set this all up. So we're going to go ahead and apply. And we've now done this to the duplicated master material. So now that we've done that to the master material on this staircase, we can select the mesh here, which is the stairs. And once we do that, we can go into modes, mesh paint, and select the mesh again. Then you hit paint. And you're going to want a smaller brush size probably. That's a little bit big. It's still really big, geez. That's fine. And we're going to want to go into the channels and make sure that we turn off the other channels. And when you're painting, depending on how you've set it up, you either have to hold shift to paint, and as you can see here, I'm holding shift and painting in those grass textures, or to delete it, you would then just click back in and go back over it, and it would delete itself. And if you set it up differently, it can be inverted sometimes. So, depending on the way that you set it up with, the math, it will either be, shift click to draw, or it will be just regular click to draw, and then, the inverse of that to delete. So that's basically vertex painting. You can paint on all of these different objects, which is super sweet. And if your texture is really, really, detailed and sharp, and your normals are great, then you can get some really nice results. So I'm going to undo all of that, and I'm going to start painting this with actual textures that I want. I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to replace that texture with something else. We're going to just do something different. So let's find a rock texture. I like that. Cool. So we'll grab this castle rock, which here is the albedo. So I'll grab that. I'm going to delete the old one because I don't want to do that. And attach my A there. I'm also going to go down to that normal that relates to it and bring in the new normal. I'm going to bring that to the B channel. Let's apply that and let's go painting. Wah wah. What did I do wrong? Uh-oh. Ah, right. Well, here's my mistake. I mixed the inputs up. So I need to put that here, and I need A to go here, because that's actually the way the math works. So now we can apply it again, and it'll go back to normal. All right, cool. So now let's start painting this thing. Now, if you have a Wacom, you can do it with that. You know, I am doing it with a mouse right now. I've recently hurt my hand, so I only have one hand really to do this with. But all right, so I've painted in a bunch of different textures here, as you can see, and you know, I'm ready now to sort of start lighting my scene. Lighting is really important, obviously, and I'm not a lighter, but I'm going to do my best. So let's see. We'll start with the directional light because that is sort of our sun. And you know, if we start rotating that around, we can kind of find an angle that looks really nice. Don't forget that, you know, the Z and the Y both control sort of like, you know, time of day, so you can sort of like, you know, try and do something like that. And it seems like this might be a little hot here, so we're going to go back in and paint that out. Yeah, that seems better. Maybe we'll put it back on a little. Yeah, it's looking nice. Alright, so now we're going to grab some other lights. And you can kind of, you know, choose where you want these. Let me grab my directional light. I kind of want it to be, you know, dusk time, so we're going to use temperature. And we're going to change the time of day to be, you know, a little bit more like that. You know, I'm just grabbing some like point lights here, you know, and some different things to sort of get some different lighting into my scene. Cool. So that's looking pretty awesome.